Hello, there's another tough video, tell a friend video, this time on the brain manual. This is actually a project from myself, trying to write, to sum up like the most important things about the brain. And I sum them up in 10 chapters. The first chapter is the chapter who has the power in the brain. So when you look at your head, most people think they have just, one brain and that's me. But in reality, we have many different brains. And for this scope here, I distinguish between 3 different brains. That is the reptile brain, that is the limbic system, and that is the neocortex. And now there's a mechanism, which ones of which is active. If you have fear, then the reptile brain takes over. If you're hungry, reptile brain. So all the basic features, the reptile brain. If you want to have sex, the reptile brain. And if that thing is, this specific condition is met, the reptile brain is the boss. So reptile brain is number 1. And now if the reptile brain is fine, then it depends a little bit on what kind of person you are. I come to that later. But then the limbic system is the one that wants you to be part of your group, and it wants to be, it wants to fulfill your vision. Yeah? So you want to be part of the group, and then the limbic system takes over, and it wants to follow the vision, it wants to stay in the group, it wants to have the community. And in order to do that, it actually then asks the slave, which is the neocortex, our rational brain, to actually help him to do the goals it wants to do. So the order is reptile brain, limbic system, and then the neocortex is the slave. That's very, very important to know. Then in the second chapter, I come to a different thing, and that is how our character, how our self, how we how we seem to others develops. And the development here is very, very simple. When you grow up, you have in your center, you kind of develop yourself. And this self here wants to be, initially you are narcissistic, you only know yourself. And then, you meet the environment. So with the months and years of your development, you notice that's me, and the surrounding, it's draw it in that way, the surrounding wants you in a specific way. And now what happens is that you do something, you notice the surrounding, let's say your dad or your mom, or your friends don't want that. And then you want to be like this, and you notice they don't like this. So you can't be like you want to be. So you have to hide things that you cannot do, you're not good enough. And now the thing is, often it's yourself that says, I'm not good enough, because you think that these guys, and I come to that later in the avatar model in chapter 3, this is chapter 2, that you think yourself that you are not that you are not good enough. And so what you do is you protect, your weaknesses, your deficiencies, you protect them with kind of a big concrete wall. Yeah. And then you have to think, okay, now your real soul, your real being is actually captured in the middle. And now what you do is you create your own personality around it. So you say, I'd like to be like that. And usually I'd like to be like that means I want to overcome the deficits I have in here. So if you are very insecure, you want to compensate that by maybe ignorance, or by refusing to learn, or maybe by exactly the opposite, by perfection. So what you then develop is your personality around that. This is kind of your constructed personality, which is usually, now if this inside which you hide, the concrete wall is very thin, then these two may be relatively similar. So your inner and your outer personality, your soul and your personality, your created personality, are very similar. But usually there's a big difference, and the more, I call it narcissistic, you are, the more thick is the concrete wall, and protecting yourself, the blue thing is yourself, against the inner. And then what happens is this blue circle is not, that is much liked by other people. So that is, you put a mask so that people don't see your personality which you created. So the mask usually is, I'm a nice person, I'm smiling, and I'm a good person. And depending on to whom you talk, you might have a different, so maybe to ladies you have a different, to your parents you have a different one. So you might have different masks, but the thing is, you will have a lot of masks here. Now, obviously, the thing is, there are, this is a narcissistic with a very thick concrete wall around the inner. So if you look at like maybe a person that is very open-minded and very open, then he might have a very, very thin, a very thin layer. He doesn't have to protect the inside because he actually likes the inside. He says, no, I'm fine, I have some deficits, but I like them. It's me, so I don't have to. And so the layers are very, very thin. And also the mask you have to wear are very, very thin. And so when somebody looks from the outside to that person, he actually sees right into your heart, into your middle. A lot of people don't want that. And now, obviously, there is not black and white, but there is also some difference between. So it could be that you are an in-between of the two. It could be, even some people say that also. I'm not very much convinced that this is true. Some people say that they, towards maybe a person they love, so let's say falls in love, and that means the mask goes down and your personality goes down, and then the concrete wall is being brought down, and this person is allowed to watch your inner. And while this may be occasionally true, but I doubt that this usually happens. Okay, so that was chapter 2, the like how you mask your inner self, And then the third chapter I actually like a lot. Now the thing is, your brain, what is it designed for? So I now draw just one brain. Here we have a 3-brain model. Here we have a composition. So I come to that in later chapters, like how this corresponds to this, and then also to this. So now in your brain, what you do is you use your brain to actually kind of build inside your brain your environment. This is your world, and now you see that world. So you see it, you watch it, and then you store these things in here. You store the people, and you store them in form of little avatars, call them avatars, that all live in your head. They all live in here. And now the thing is, also your own ego is an avatar. Now, if you're a very egoistic person, your avatar, like a narcissist person, that would be your avatar, and the others are very small and they have to serve you. If you are very altruistic, then you might have a very small ego and the other ones are bigger. But Now consider, these are the people, like these are the people, but there are also all the objects, even the street, the clouds, and all these things are representations in your brain. And when you close your eyes, you think using the little models, the little avatars in your head, and that means greater than 99% of your thoughts are being done by your avatars and not in reality. So please watch out. And even if you have this approach, this Nike, just do it, so to be very, very active and always do it and always talk to people and so on, still, when you close your eyes, when you sit somewhere, when you don't see that thing, don't touch it, then it's just a model in here, and you use a model to think about the world. So that is very, very important to say that. And now the interesting thing is, but in this summary here, I cannot go very much into detail, but I mentioned here your vision, and the vision is actually not yourself. The vision is I call it the puppet player. So you have, your vision is, this is yourself, this is your ego, but your ego is being played by the puppet player. So he plays you, and he plays he orchestrates the whole thing. So he's the boss. And that means if this puppet player wants to make sure you reach your vision in life. Who are you? Who do you want to be? What is your belief system? Where do you want to arrive? How do you see yourself? This is your puppet player. So you have little avatars, living and also things. You have yourself as an ego, and you have the puppet player. Okay, that was it for chapter 3. Now we go to chapter 4, and that is, if you look at your brain, so this is this chap, and another brain here. Now, we always have, or everybody has heard about that we have this highly associative brain. And let's draw it here in blue. This is an associative brain. But then you also have a very rational serial brain. And the serial brain is very easy. It's the brain that kind of feeds your associative brain, and it's also the for example, your language, you talk, you say something, you think. Here you have 1,000 thoughts, and then you have to serialize them into words. And the same here, you read some things, you read the words, you hear the words, you see something, and then that has to go into your associative brain. Now the thing is, you have only indirect control over what comes out of your associative brain. So when somebody asks you about, not about what time is it, because then, it's a very, very easy thing. You just look on your watch, or you ask your smartphone, and you answer. But if you are asked about a relatively complicated question, how do you consider the the evolution of history during the 1800s, and then it's your associative brain that has to draw a lot of things out and then serialize them. But you have hardly any influence now on what this part thinks. The only trick is to find entry points by questions into your brain, and that is sometimes difficult. So to find the entry points into your associative brain, because once you have an entry point, then usually you have kind of an explosion of thoughts about this, and then maybe find another entry point, you have other associations, and if you're really lucky, then these associations are stored in a way that makes sense with reality. And here we are. Now, if you so you feed your associative brain with your with your slow thinking structural serial brain. But here you have two things. One is filters. So it could be you hear information, but this information you don't like, it is against your belief system, then you will actually discard that information or change it and then store it in here. And why is that? Because the information you try to put into your associative brain that does not fit anywhere, you actually refuse, and you won't make it, it will bounce off, it will just go through you. You will not be able to perceive it. While if there is something that actually corresponds to your brain, to your belief system, it will easily make it into associative thinking. Now, knowing that you have these two brains, there are several tricks you can work with that. And one of it is with your serial brain, you can, for example, you can decide what you want to read. So that means, first of all, you need a goal. I usually draw that in green: a vision, a goal, a daily goal, a question, and so on. That's what you want to reach. And now the thing is, what you can do now is you can try to Google, to read and to discuss as many things as possible. As when you think, that's now overload, that was too much information, then maybe sit down for 5 minutes and so sketch it down. What you find, 2 or 3 things I still don't know, and then leave it. Because if you have the goal, then your associative brain is actually interested. It's in the end, it's your limbic system with your vision. You want to achieve that. The limbic system will get you there. It has also the orientation, like, how do I get to my goal? So if you, for example, you're thirsty, how do I get to the Sorgent where there's water? And every step brings you there, and every step makes you more happy. So if your goal is answering a specific question, then you read all the information that you can find, then you can reflect on it, you read even more, and then you leave it. And then your associative brain will clean up this mess, make sense out of this mess. And now comes a very important thing. That usually happens during the night. And then when you wake up, you actually please then use your slow structural serial brain to verify if what your associative brain has actually arranged, during the night. And watch out, during the night you cannot Google. During the night, the brain has only the things available that are in your brain, in your associative brain, reachable. And it will use that to make associations. And in the morning, you will be surprised what type of associations your brain has created. So please check them in the morning. So make another drawing, and some people say, under the shower, I had the idea. Yes, this is kind of this is an indication how this works. But now, what I explain now is how you can use this strategically to actually come up with a lot of thoughts, a lot of ideas, be able to store a lot of information during night. You put the information in, you let it arrange that information associatively during the night, and then you check whether the associations have been right. Now, obviously, in most cases we are biased, and so we will not make these associations so that they correspond to reality. So that means you have inside your brain, as I showed here, inside your brain, your associations are different than the associations here. So maybe inside you think they are friends, but they are not friends. He would like to kill him, but maybe your vision is that people are very good to each other. So no, he cannot kill him. So your associations here would be, no, he's nice and he's nice, but maybe he's evil and he's nice, and he's in danger. But your brain maybe will not notice that, will not allow that to notice, allow that to associate. So what you can do can do with that you can use your serial brain to feed your associative brain. And please try to kind of develop this as an art, and that's fantastic. You have a, you know, you have so much more power. Now, this actually has been already chapter 4, 5, and 6, because it's all this how you learn, how you verify, and so on. Now, I mentioned that the associative brain is very, very powerful. Now, how can, let's say, how can you show how powerful an associative brain is? And for this, I've created a meme model. A meme, just to explain it, I draw it always like a cloud. This is a meme, M-E-M-E. And a meme is kind of the same as a gene, but in memory and thoughts. So, for example, a very simple thing is a joke is a meme because you tell a joke, and you have to tell it in a specific way, otherwise it's not funny. So you cannot start from the end, because then you already showed the thing that is funny. So a meme, for example, a joke, will stay together, and a meme also is something like water develops into ice at let's say at 0 degrees. And then that is kind of, you can see that everywhere. So you could say that's a meme. And here, I don't want to go into details what is the smallest meme there is, but I see in my model the brain as one meta meme. It's a big meme. It has, because also this meme is, you know, this joke is associations, words, associations, and then it's, for example, this joke is then funny. Okay, and now if that meme, this joke, goes into the brain, and now this is here serial, so the words go in, and now this brain, obviously this meme, is the mega meme, the brain meme, actually now, and this is much, much smaller, but it's associations. So the associations of this meme actually flow through your brain. So they flow through your brain and then create resonances or dissonances. So, and you either like it or you don't like it. And so, but the important thing is, this thing flows through your brain, and if you like it, you remember it. If you don't like it, maybe even then you remember it, but you notice that if you like it, it creates resonances or dissonances. And then, very important, a lot of memes just flow through, and your brain meme cannot even understand those things. It cannot grasp the content of this meme. That means, so for example, some people read a book and say, oh, I didn't understand what it's about. And somebody else says, I completely understand what it's about. I completely understand what the author means. I can, for example, convert this into, or relate that to a specific situation without problem. And another person may have read the same book or may have heard the same story, and he cannot relate at all. And that means the meme does not meet a corresponding meme in your brain. And now I wanted to say how powerful is a brain, how to calculate that. And now I would say a normal meme, you know, can be about 7, a meme obviously is serialized, so it can be relatively long. The story can be relatively long, so your brain listens all the time while it gets these words. But what happens in order to calculate the power, what your brain can do, can understand serially, you know, parallelly, in parallel at the same time. And I heard a lot of time it's 7. 7 things you can grasp at the same time. But what I say is that when these 7 things flow, and these are human relative chunks of information, so it's not it's something that is important for a human, so it's a chunk that a human can grasp. And now when these 7 flow through the associations, then it triggers. So a thought comes in, it triggers 7 others, up to 7 others, maybe plus minus 2. But now the thing is, now arrives another, so another 7 and another 7. And these 3 or even 4 can be, as you have seen here with the story, these 7 things could then resonate in your brain kind of at the same time and create and like each one, like there's a clock cycle in your brain, approximately 1/20th of a second. Yeah. And so that means when these, and so when you think about this, and then the next time comes this, and the next comes this, then you can still, up to, if you're very, very clever, very, very smart, you can actually grasp about 4 of them. So that means you have about 2,000 things you can consider at the same time. In general, I would say it's only something like here 50, so 49, or it's times 7, so it's like 343, so around 300. But some people could even grasp 1,000 things at the same time, and think about them and consider them at the same time. And this is actually the potential of very, very smart people. When you, for example, have to think like Einstein did in his in this curved space time continuum, to think in that is very, 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 very hard. You have to remember a lot of things, consider a lot of things at the same time in your brain. And so that is kind of my theory, how many things you can have in your thinking process at the same time in your brain. Okay, that is about the power of your brain. And so it was 2 things. How powerful is a brain? So how many of these things can it grasp one after another, but without forgetting the first? So, and the window is something like 2, 3, or 4. And if it's 4, then that means you have 2,000 things you can consider at the same time. Okay, that is the power of the brain. And now we come to the kind of humans as animals. Like if I look at bees or as ants, so the ants, there's like 1 million ants, and they live in this little hill, and there's the queen, and then you have soldiers and you have workers and so on. And they don't have consciousness. So, and they act like one organism. The same as for bees. They are a little bit more intelligent, I assume, than ants. And they also have the queen that makes the eggs and so on. Then you have the workers, you have the soldiers, and you have the collectors, and so on. So you have kind of 4, 5 different jobs, specializations, and also these have no consciousness. And now if you look at people, the thing is, if you have 1 million people on one small ground, and then they also start to behave kind of like these states, like ants or bees. And this is almost a general thing. You cannot help in such a 1 million people or 1 billion people, in a globalized world. You will have these guys follow. They follow. They group together, and so on. And you can actually control them very, very easily. Group them together, group those together, and so you create in crowded environments. You create groups. They fight each other. They are friends with each other. They split up, and so on. And now, in a society, you would always have some free thinkers that are kind of philosophers and so on, but only very individual people. And you have to be very, very strong, because the others, the bees and ants, they will actually try to bring them down, kill them even, like in the medieval times that has happened. Okay. Now the 9th chapter would be about Socrates up to any official, doesn't matter, Viktor Frankl, Solzhenitsyn, I don't know, here in the middle, Hegel, Spinoza, obviously Plato writing down Socrates stuff, Machiavelli, you have Viktor Frankl, you have Erich Fromm, you have lots of philosophers, lots of thinkers. And now the thing is, in literature, Hermann Hesse, Thomas Mann, lots of people that thought about, and these are kind of these which I drew here in green. They wrote a lot of, also the Asians, they wrote, they have a culture that's even older than the Greek culture, and they wrote also a lot of books, very enlightening books about the behavior of humans. And so I think it is very, very important for people that want to be enlightened. And here it's a very strange thing. When the mass people actually read those books, they draw completely different conclusions of it, or they don't draw any conclusion, like here. They don't draw any conclusion of it. Or not the conclusion that actually the writer actually intended. And so for a good education, I think you should go through, probably a good book would be on that from Plato, Utopia, where he explained this. So I would say in your education, you should try to understand all these philosophers. And obviously there are some philosophers that are kind of in the red part that actually are, and I would even consider people like Freud or Schopenhauer to be in the red part, because they follow this approach where they say, yeah, poor you, and no, you don't have to work on yourself. No, you, the others are poor. You are poor, and the others are bad, and the environment did it, and you have no guilt. You are not guilty, and whatever, Okay, so my recommendation would be to read these books, and lots of them try to understand and discuss it with people, be open-minded, in order to be one of these green ones. But most people, I would say greater 90, maybe even 95% will be in the mass, the mass people. Which is normal, which is the society cannot cope with too many free individuals. That doesn't work. It would work kind of in the forest. If there are small groups living in the forest, then obviously we can have a lot more free thinkers than, and we must have a lot more free thinkers, because we have to invent all the new things. But if you're in a big group, then just maintain the status quo, and then you'll be okay. Okay, and that brings me exactly with a recommendation on what to read. It actually brought me into chapter 10, which is thinking and learning. And it's very, very important to say that there's a huge difference between knowledge, which if I go to the serial brain, here you can have knowledge, you read some date, you read how many kilo you need for what, and so on. But that is not associative thinking. So that would be knowledge. Yes, that would be like a fact, but it's not the fact only becomes important and usable when it has a lot of associations to other facts. So a fact per se, fact one, and it stays there, then sorry. But if you have fact two, fact three, fact four, and maybe fact four is not right, then the associations with the others will actually make that you noticed. So these ones are correct, these ones are correct, these ones, and then you say, no, then this one is not correct. Then maybe we remove that, or maybe this link is not right, or maybe there's a different and we link it like that, or it's exactly the opposite, something like, and then you can do kind of, when your brain will do that itself. If you have lots of associations, it will eliminate the ones that don't make sense. So please learn a lot of stuff, but get your head around it and learn a lot of associations with the same things. And this creating associations will work best when you discuss, when you explain, when you read, and then discuss it with somebody, or maybe discuss it with yourself, reflect about it, draw it. For example, this is also an experiment for me to draw it like this. It's a complete mess here. The book I intend to do is much more structured. But this was from the top of my head to explain these things, and it's now almost 40 minutes. But it is a complete kind of brain manual. Now you can obviously dig deeper in each one of those. There's books on just this, just the 3 brain model. You can read 500 pages if you want to. Also about here how your brain is, your inner self is protected by a concrete wall, and you build your personality, and then you put the mask on top of the personality. You can read about that as well. Or, for example, that you model in your brain with little avatars, with little models. You model with little entities that correspond to the real world. Then also the associative thinking and the slow thinking, structural thinking. So associative thinking, you cannot find if it's unlogical. That you can only do in your logical, structural, slow, serial brain. Then you can think about it and say, oh, that association was wrong. But it was an association. So because the associative brain cannot say, it can exclude here, but this requires thinking, and this is serial thinking to then say, oh, wait, reasoning, oh no, if that and that and that, and then this, and that is logical thinking, and you break and say, oh no, then this cannot be, and so this is a very important concept, slow thinking, fast thinking. And then this is a new stuff with the meme flowing through your mega meme, the brain. And then the other thing, the second in this chapter, is how many things you can grasp at the same time, keep at the same time in your brain, in your thinking. And obviously, if it gets too complicated, what you can do is you can actually cluster things. So you say, oh, this plus this plus this, I now understand. And this becomes then one entity, yeah? And then these would be only 5 entities instead of 7, because you clustered 3 into 1. Okay, then obviously when you kind of take away the enlightenment, of the human brain, then we behave just like bees and ants. And then the recommendation for me would be read good literature, try to understand math, physics, chemistry, look at the surroundings, look at his works, discuss things with people, which is exactly leading to chapter 10. Discuss, come into action, try, and again, go out, even if you think, maybe I'm not 100% sure, but go out and say, this is my opinion, and discuss it, but be open to then change your opinion and say, okay, understand, maybe it's like you said, okay, that's a good point. Then maybe you research a little bit, you go to sleep, your brain, if you want to do it, if you really want to do it, your brain will do it automatically for you. And then the next morning you have more associations, check them if they're right, discuss them again with other people, go into the action, go into the outside. And I think if you do that for several years, I think your brain will be, you will not recognize your brain anymore. You will excel. Be careful that you don't overdo. So relax, do meditation every once in a while, because this is a small, thing. This is the brain is, this is just about how your brain works. So I think this should be taught already in elementary school, so that people, obviously a little bit easier way, but so that the kids know how their brain works, and that means that they then can be very clever to using it, very efficiently use their brain. And that is why I am a big advocate of telling people this. Once you have developed your brain like this, then you can think about other things. You can, then the sky is the limit. Thank you very much for listening, and talk to you next time. Bye-bye.